This lesson is an introduction to one of the loops, for. At the beginning I will show a more theoretical example showing the mechanics of the loop, and later we will come to use some more practical appliance. So the first example will just print a message on a screen multiple times, but normally this kind of loop can be used to process files, computers, users, processes and much more administrative objects. For can be started in Bash using two different syntaxes. The first one is a for statement, where we have a variable which takes the current value from a list. This list could be a set of files, lines in a text file, or a value from a list defined somewhere in your script. The loop will be executed for every element from that list. This could be, for example, removal of file, compression of file, encryption, or when processing a text file with email addresses, the script could send to each of the emails a nice spam message. This syntax is the most frequently used in Bash, and mostly because it's easy to use when working with objects present on the system. The other syntax is rather like to language C. Here we can use a typical programmatical for loop. The most important here is a variable called sometimes a control variable. This variable is initiated with a value mentioned here as expression 1. When the loop instructions are executed, they can use the value of that variable. When all instructions are executed, the value of the control variable will be increased or decreased according to the expression 3. After that, Bash will check if the condition mentioned in expression 2 is still true. If yes, then the loop will be executed once again with a new value of the control variable, but if not, the loop will be finished. This type of loop programming is characteristic for applications of higher level, not for Bash, where mostly we work with more or less substantial objects available in Linux like file or device. We will analyze here the first syntax, this more practical. We will start, however, with something really simple. I want just to display 5 numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, for the variable I, changing the value starting from 1 to 5, execute following actions. Here I need to write do, and the finish of the loop is defined with the word done. What should we do in the loop? Here we want only to print the value of the I variable. I think it would be difficult to invent a simpler loop. So, let's change the permissions and start the script. As the result, we have values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, exactly as I wanted. So, let's come to the next example. That will be a typical multiplication table. I would say one of the most popular examples of how the loops work. For variable I, starting from 1 to 5, do following actions. What actions? In our case, every number I should be multiplied by a new value starting from 1 to 5. So I need to nest here the second loop. For variable j, starting from 1 to 5, we should do something. What should be executed in the internal loop? Let's say I want to display $I multiplied by $j. And print the result of that calculation. Let's see if the script works correctly. 1 multiplied by 1, 1 multiplied by 2, by 3, by 4, by 5, and now the first value changes. 2 multiplied by 1, 2 multiplied by 2, by 3, by 4, by 5, and again the first value changes to 3, and so on. A nested for loop. I think that's not a best example for operating system administrator, but it shows how to work with nested loops. Now you can be sure that programming in Bash is very similar to programming in any other popular language. So let's go to next example. I will create a text file with some website addresses. The first and the second addresses are correct. The third address should not be correct, and the last one is again okay. I want to write a loop that will be able to process each line of that file. This line of text should be stored in a variable. Having such a variable, I would be able to do some actions with web addresses. In this lesson, it will be enough to just display the line, but later we can really use data from text file to get some nice and practical results. The script could look like this. So for every line of text which can be read from the result of the command cat servers txt, do following action. Display the value of variable. Now I will start the script. And note, all the lines have been displayed. Maybe that's not impressive, because we could display content of the file by just running the cat command. But note that now, inside the loop, I got variable server pointing to the names of the servers taken from the file, and that's great, because the value was taken from the variable. Let's go further. Here we have a directory files. Let's suppose that the application exports here some data. Using command touch, I will simulate the work of that crazy application. Touch file data 1.5. This will cause that touch will create 5 files. Touch create empty files with a given name, so when I now list the content of the directory files, I will find here 5 files. I want to execute an action on every file from this directory. How to do it? Well, for each variable file taken from the expansion of file mask files *.txt, do following actions. Print the $file, so the value of the variable file. Of course, we could do here something more, but here the goal was only to show how the for loop works, so for the moment that's all. What is the result of running our brand new script? The files have been displayed. Great! I know that it could be done easier. ls command would be enough. The for loop was not invented to list directories, but no worries. We will do something more practical with those files later. The last example. Let's assume that for some reason I want to create directories with names reflecting the days of the week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday and weekend, Saturday and Sunday. How to write a loop that can process the names of the week contained in a long string variable separated with spaces. That will not be hard. Look, it is enough to write for day in $days do, and here we can put any instruction that would use the variable day containing the weekday. In this case, I will only display the variable. We will expand the example later. It's time to do a test. Nice, all the days are printed. Very good. But here one additional note. Often I encourage to enclose the text into the apostrophes or quotes. Unfortunately, the instruction here is an exception. Would the days be enclosed within the quotes? Then after running the script once again, the variable day will be treated as a one long string and not a list. So the for loop was executed only once, displaying this long text. The variable days, working here as a list, should not be enclosed in quotes. So, in this lesson we are able to see some examples of for loop in maybe a bit strange or dummy scenario, just displaying some values generated in a loop. Some more practical and interesting actions will be shown in the next lesson.